The Improbable Ape, A Journey Through the Astronomical Odds of Human Existence, by Rob Corley. Written and produced by Rob Corley. The great filters shaped the biological landscape that made our evolution possible, but they were just the beginning of our improbable journey. The next chapter of our story takes us to the specific evolutionary innovations that transformed our ancestors from ordinary primates into something unprecedented. Beings capable of understanding their own existence. But first, we need to meet the ghosts. For most of human history, we were not alone. The hominin family tree was not a single straight line leading inevitably to us, but a sprawling, bushy thicket of branches, each representing a unique evolutionary experiment in what it means to be human. Multiple human species coexisted for millions of years, each carving out its own niche, developing its own technologies, and navigating the challenges of a dynamic planet. Then, one by one, they vanished. Our current world, with its singular human presence, is an anomaly, a statistical quirk in the grand narrative of hominin evolution. We are the last survivors of a once vibrant and varied family, the sole inheritors of a legacy that was meant to be shared. This is the story of our lost cousins, the environmental pressures and narrow escapes that led to their disappearance, and the astonishingly improbable survival of our own lineage. It's a story that forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. We are not the inevitable culmination of evolution, but the unlikely survivors of a cosmic lottery where almost everyone else lost. The world that almost was. Imagine a different Earth, not unlike our own, yet profoundly transformed by the presence of multiple human species. Picture a landscape where the robust, cold-adapted Neanderthals, with their powerful physiques and intricate toolkits, share hunting grounds with the enigmatic Denisovans, whose genetic legacy still whispers in the DNA of modern Asian populations. Envision the diminutive Homo floresiensis, the hobbits of Flores Island, navigating their unique island ecosystem with tools and fire, perhaps trading stories across the water with seafaring Homo erectus populations. In the caves of South Africa, Homo naledi tends to their dead with a reverence that challenges everything we thought we knew about the relationship between brain size and consciousness. And amidst them all, our own ancestors, Homo sapiens, would be just one thread in a rich tapestry of human diversity. Remarkable, perhaps, but not unique, not alone. This isn't science fiction. For the vast majority of human history, this was our reality. As recently as 50,000 years ago, a blink of an eye in evolutionary terms, at least 4 distinct human species walked the Earth simultaneously. Each had survived millions of years of environmental challenges, developed sophisticated technologies, and created their own unique solutions to the problem of being human. The fact that we now stand alone is not a testament to our superiority, but to a series of accidents, catastrophes, and narrow escapes that eliminated our cousins and left us as the sole survivors of what was once a crowded family reunion. Meet the family. To understand what we lost, we need to meet our extinct relatives, not as primitive stepping stones on the path to modern humanity, but as fully realized human species with their own remarkable adaptations and achievements. Homo habilis, the toolmaker's dawn. Our story begins 2.4 million years ago in East Africa with Homo habilis, the handyman. Discovered by Louis and Mary Leakey in Tanzania's Olduvai Gorge, habilis represents a crucial turning point in human evolution. The moment when our ancestors began systematically modifying the world around them. Their brains were still relatively small, only about 600 cubic centimeters, compared to our 1,350. But habilis possessed something revolutionary, the consistent ability to make and use stone tools. These weren't accidental discoveries or one-off innovations, but a sustained technological tradition passed down through generations. The Oldowan tools of Homo habilis were simple but effective, sharp flakes struck from stone cores that could cut meat, crack bones, and process plant materials. This may seem primitive by our standards, but it represented a cognitive leap of enormous significance. For the first time in Earth's history, a species was systematically reshaping its environment to suit its needs. Imagine if habilis had survived and continued evolving. With millions more years of technological development, they might have created civilizations based on stone architecture and precision lithic engineering. Their cities might have been carved from living rock, their art expressed through the subtle geometry of perfectly knapped tools. We lost not just a species, but an entire alternative pathway to technological civilization. Homo erectus, the great wanderer. If any human species deserved to inherit the Earth, it might have been Homo erectus. For nearly 2 million years, longer than any other human species, erectus dominated the Old World, spreading from Africa to Asia in one of the most successful migrations in human history. Erectus was the first human to master fire, a technology that transformed everything about how they lived. Fire provided warmth in cold climates, protection from predators, light in the darkness, and most importantly, the ability to cook food. Cooked food is easier to digest and provides more calories, feeding the energy-hungry brains that would become the hallmark of the human lineage. They were also master tool makers, creating the elegant, symmetrical hand axes of the Acheulean tradition. These tools required sophisticated planning and spatial reasoning to create, each one a testament to the cognitive abilities of their makers. Some Acheulean hand axes are so perfectly crafted that they seem to transcend mere utility, suggesting an early aesthetic sense. Recent discoveries have revealed that erectus was even more remarkable than we previously thought. Evidence from sites in Tanzania shows they could thrive in harsh steppe desert environments, adapting to conditions that would challenge even modern humans. They built shelters, cared for their disabled members, and may have been the first humans to develop a form of symbolic communication. Erectus survived for nearly 2 million years across vast geographic ranges and diverse environments. If longevity and adaptability were the measures of evolutionary success, they should have been the ones to develop agriculture, writing, and space travel. Instead, they vanished around 110,000 years ago, leaving behind only stone tools and fossil bones as testimony to their remarkable journey. Homo neanderthalensis, the misunderstood cousins. No extinct human species captures our imagination quite like the Neanderthals. For over 300,000 years, they dominated Europe and parts of Western Asia, surviving ice ages that would have challenged any human population. Far from the brutish caricatures of early anthropology, Neanderthals were sophisticated people with rich cultural lives. Their brains were actually larger than ours on average, and they used this intelligence to create complex technologies and social systems. They made specialized tools for different tasks, used birch tar as an adhesive, requiring sophisticated knowledge of chemistry, and created the first known musical instruments, bone flutes that could produce complex melodies. Recent archaeological discoveries have revolutionized our understanding of Neanderthal capabilities. Cave paintings in Spain, dating to over 60,000 years ago, prove that Neanderthals were creating symbolic art before modern humans even arrived in Europe. They made jewelry from eagle talons and shells, suggesting a sophisticated sense of personal adornment and possibly social status. Neanderthals cared for their sick and elderly, buried their dead with apparent ritual significance, and may have had a form of spoken language. They were not failed humans, they were successful humans who happened to follow a different evolutionary path. Their extinction around 40,000 years ago remains one of the great mysteries of human evolution. Climate change played a role, but Neanderthals had survived previous ice ages. Competition with modern humans was likely a factor, but the two species coexisted for thousands of years and even interbred. The loss of the Neanderthals represents the disappearance of an entire alternative vision of what it means to be human. The Denisovans, ghosts in our genes. The Denisovans are perhaps the most mysterious of our extinct relatives, known primarily through their genetic legacy rather than fossil remains. Identified initially from a single finger bone in Siberia's Denisova cave, their existence was confirmed through ancient DNA analysis, a testament to the power of modern genetic techniques. What we know about Denisovans comes largely from their genes, which live on in modern human populations across Asia and Oceania. Some Melanesian populations carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA, while Tibetans inherited a crucial gene variant that allows them to thrive at high altitudes. This genetic introgression has had profound adaptive consequences, influencing everything from immune responses to metabolism in modern humans. Recent discoveries suggest that Denisovans were far more diverse and widespread than initially thought. Multiple distinct Denisovan populations interbred with early Homo sapiens across vast geographical ranges, from Siberia to Southeast Asia to the highlands of Tibet. They were clearly successful and adaptable, capable of surviving in environments ranging from Arctic tundra to tropical islands. The Denisovans represent a reminder that human evolution was not a simple linear progression, but a complex web of divergence, migration, and genetic exchange. Their disappearance as a distinct species eliminated one branch of this web, but their genetic contributions continue to influence human biology today. Homo floresiensis, the island experiment. On the remote Indonesian island of Flores, evolution conducted one of its most remarkable experiments in human diversity. Homo floresiensis, the hobbits, stood only about 3 feet tall, with brains no larger than a chimpanzee's, yet they were sophisticated toolmakers who hunted dwarf elephants and survived until perhaps 50,000 years ago. The floresiensis represent an example of island dwarfism, the evolutionary tendency for large animals to become smaller when isolated on islands with limited resources. But despite their small size and brains, they retained the essential human capacity for culture and technology. They made stone tools, controlled fire, and organized cooperative hunts for large prey. Their existence challenges our assumptions about the relationship between brain size and intelligence. If floresiensis could maintain complex technologies with brains 1/3 the size of ours, what does that say about the nature of human cognition? Perhaps intelligence is more about neural organization than raw brain volume. The hobbits of Flores represent a unique solution to the challenge of being human in an isolated environment. Their extinction, possibly coinciding with the arrival of modern humans in the region, eliminated this alternative pathway to human existence, leaving us to wonder what other innovations they might have developed given more time. Homo naledi, the puzzle in the cave. The most recent addition to our family tree is also one of the most puzzling. Homo naledi, discovered in South Africa's Rising Star cave system in 2013, presents a bewildering mix of primitive and advanced traits. They had small brains and curved fingers, suggesting they still spent time in trees, yet they appear to have deliberately disposed of their dead in deep, hard-to-access caves. If confirmed, this behavior would represent the earliest known evidence of ritualized treatment of the dead, a practice previously thought to require the large brains of Neanderthals or modern humans. The implications are staggering. Naledi suggests that complex symbolic behavior might not require large brains, challenging our understanding of cognitive evolution. The Naledi discoveries are still being analyzed, but they hint at forms of human intelligence and culture that we're only beginning to understand. Their extinction represents the loss of yet another experiment in what it means to be human. The Great Disappearance. Why are we alone? What forces conspired to eliminate this rich diversity of human species, leaving Homo sapiens as the sole survivor of what was once a crowded family tree? The answer is complex, involving climate change, competition, and perhaps our own species' unique and sometimes devastating capabilities. Climate, the relentless pressure. The Pleistocene epoch was a time of dramatic environmental instability. Ice ages came and went with increasing frequency, reshaping continents and transforming habitats. Sea levels rose and fell by hundreds of feet, connecting and isolating populations in an endless cycle of geographic change. Species adapted to specific environments were particularly vulnerable to these shifts. The Neanderthals, highly adapted to the cold, fragmented landscapes of Ice Age Europe, struggled when rapid warming events disrupted their hunting grounds and traditional prey. Homo floresiensis, isolated on their island paradise, may have been doomed by rising sea levels or the arrival of new predators and competitors. But climate alone doesn't explain the pattern of extinctions. Many of these species had survived previous climate changes, Something else was happening during the late Pleistocene that made this round of environmental change particularly deadly. Competition. The arrival of Homo sapiens. That something else was us. As Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa in successive waves beginning around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, their arrival often coincided with the decline and disappearance of other human populations. This raises uncomfortable questions about our role in these extinctions. The evidence suggests a complex picture of competition, coexistence, and occasional cooperation. Genetic studies reveal that modern humans interbred with both Neanderthals and Denisovans, indicating periods of peaceful contact. But archaeological evidence also shows that Homo sapiens often had technological and cultural advantages that may have given them competitive edges. Modern humans developed more sophisticated tools, including projectile weapons, that allowed hunting from a distance. They created complex social networks that could coordinate activities across vast territories. Most importantly, they demonstrated an unprecedented capacity for innovation and cultural transmission. This doesn't necessarily mean that Homo sapiens actively hunted their relatives to extinction. More likely, they simply outcompeted them for resources, gradually pushing other human populations into marginal environments where they couldn't sustain viable breeding populations. The cognitive revolution. What gave Homo sapiens their competitive advantage? The answer may lie in what Yuval Noah Harari calls the cognitive revolution, a fundamental change in human consciousness that occurred around 70,000 years ago. This revolution wasn't about brain size. Neanderthals had larger brains than we do. It was about the capacity for abstract thought, symbolic communication, and collective imagination. Homo sapiens developed the ability to create shared myths, beliefs, and social institutions that could bind together large groups of strangers in common purpose. This capacity for collective fiction, the ability to believe in gods, nations, money, and other imagined realities, allowed Homo sapiens to cooperate in groups far larger than any other human species. While Neanderthals lived in small family groups, Homo sapiens could organize tribes, confederations, and eventually, civilizations. The archaeological record supports this interpretation. The explosion of symbolic artifacts associated with early Homo sapiens, cave paintings, musical instruments, jewelry, and elaborate burial goods, suggests a species that had learned to live as much in the world of imagination as in the physical world. Near misses. When we almost joined the ghosts. Our survival wasn't guaranteed. The human lineage faced multiple population bottlenecks that brought us to the brink of extinction, events where our species was reduced to perilously small numbers that could have easily led to our own disappearance. The Great Bottleneck. Around 930,000 years ago, early human ancestors experienced a catastrophic population crash that reduced our lineage to approximately 1,280 breeding individuals. This bottleneck persisted for over 100,000 years, a period during which our ancestors teetered on the edge of oblivion. The cause of this near extinction remains unclear, but it likely involved a combination of climate change, volcanic activity, and competition with other species. What's remarkable is that this tiny population managed to survive and eventually give rise to all later human species, including Neanderthals, Denisovans, and ourselves. The Toba eruption. Around 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano in Indonesia erupted with unprecedented violence, ejecting so much ash and sulfur into the atmosphere that it triggered a volcanic winter lasting several years. Global temperatures plummeted, and many ecosystems collapsed. Some researchers argue that this eruption reduced the human population to as few as 10,000 individuals worldwide, a bottleneck so severe that it left permanent marks on our genetic diversity. While this Toba catastrophe theory remains controversial, there's no doubt that early human populations faced severe challenges during this period. The last ice age. Even after Homo sapiens had spread across much of the world, we faced another near extinction during the last glacial maximum around 20,000 years ago. Ice sheets covered much of northern Europe and North America, while deserts expanded in Africa and Asia. Human populations were forced into small refugia, isolated pockets of habitable land where they could survive the harsh conditions. Genetic studies suggest that some human populations were reduced to just a few hundred individuals during this period. The fact that we survived at all is testament to our adaptability, but it was a close call that could easily have gone the other way. The genetic legacy. Although our relatives are extinct as distinct species, they live on in our genes. The story of human evolution is not just one of replacement, but of integration. We carry within us the genetic legacy of our encounters with other human species. Modern non-African populations carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA, inherited from interbreeding events that occurred as our ancestors migrated out of Africa. This Neanderthal heritage has had significant adaptive consequences, influencing everything from immune system function to skin pigmentation to altitude adaptation. Denisovan genes are even more geographically restricted, but equally important. The EPAS1 gene variant that allows Tibetans to thrive at high altitudes was inherited from Denisovans, as were immune system variants that help Melanesians resist tropical diseases. These genetic contributions remind us that human evolution was not a simple story of one species replacing others, but a complex web of divergence, migration, and genetic exchange. We are not pure Homo sapiens, we are hybrids, carrying within us the evolutionary innovations of multiple human lineages. What we lost. The extinction of our human relatives represents an incalculable loss of biological and cultural diversity. Each species represented a unique solution to the challenge of being human, a different pathway through the landscape of evolutionary possibility. We lost the Neanderthals' cold weather adaptations and their sophisticated understanding of European ecosystems. We lost the Denisovans' high-altitude physiology and their knowledge of Asian environments. We lost the Floresiensis insights into island survival and the Naledi's alternative approaches to symbolic behavior. More profoundly, we lost the opportunity to learn from other forms of human consciousness. What would Neanderthal philosophy have looked like? How would Denisovan science have developed? What art would Floresiensis have created given more time? These questions can never be answered because we eliminated the possibility of asking them. We are alone, not because we were destined to be, but because we happen to be the survivors of a cosmic lottery where the odds were stacked against everyone. The loneliness of success. Our solitude, as the only surviving human species, is both our greatest triumph and our deepest tragedy. We succeeded where our relatives failed, but in doing so, we lost the mirror that other human species might have provided, the chance to see ourselves reflected in other forms of human consciousness. This loneliness may explain our endless fascination with the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence. We searched the cosmos for other minds because we eliminated the other minds that once shared our planet. We are the only species capable of contemplating our own existence, but we have no one to share that contemplation with except ourselves. The ghosts of our past remind us that human intelligence and consciousness are not inevitable outcomes of evolution, but improbable accidents that could easily have been lost. We are the inheritors of a legacy that was meant to be shared, the sole survivors of a family reunion that should have included many more voices. But we are also the guardians of that legacy. In our genes, we carry the innovations of our extinct relatives. In our consciousness, we preserve the memory of their existence. And in our choices, we determine whether intelligence and consciousness will continue to flourish in the universe or join our relatives in extinction. The story of our past is a reminder of how improbable our existence truly is. But it's also a call to action, a recognition that we are responsible not just for our own survival, but for the preservation of the consciousness that our ancestors, both extinct and surviving, worked so hard to create. The ghosts of our past shaped us, but they also challenge us. They remind us that we are not the inevitable culmination of evolution, but its current experiment in consciousness. Whether that experiment succeeds or fails depends on what we do next.